Hi, I'm Randy Berry with Eagle Vistas. This will be the last this is number 5 and the last of the first 5 informative videos that we've put together at Eagle Vistas entitled Everything You Want to Know About Crop Dusting We're Afraid to Ask. We do plan on another series soon. This particular last series is specifically to address mostly the farmers and commercial ground applicators and possibly give them some food for thought. I'm sure that from time to time they've thought of different things. One, the benefits of doing it yourself, Mr. Farmer, and for the commercial ground applicators, you know, I understand that you have a good relationship with your customers and everything is fine, but I could see the very worst possible thing in the world would be having a good customer you've had for many, many years, but when the fields get wet, having to give him to another commercial operator to do the splaying because you don't have an airplane. Well, believe it or not, I would guess close to half, but pretty close, 40% seems like it's a very realistic number of the operators in the United States anyway have ground equipment also to be able to do these sensitive areas around neighborhoods and around susceptible crops and this type of stuff, and they have them there. And if somebody wants ground equipment, once again, they won't want to send them to you for ground equipment spraying. You don't want to send them for the aerial application. So possibly this might fit into your concept, so that, especially if you're not really established with an operator in your area and you just wait for these carpetbaggers or remote people to come in once a year or something, not at your convenience but at theirs, it's something you might want to think about. There's great potentials and possibilities, and hopefully some of this will enlighten you on how it can be done for a lot less than you think. One thing I will say, and I always try to stress strongly though, Mr. Farmer especially, if you have an operator that's a good operator, substantially has worked with you in the past, has been on time, done quality work for a reasonable price, and you can trust him, you would be foolish to go into anything else. And I strongly recommend that, you know, that would be something to be considered. So let's break down a little bit here. Also, we will be in the Sunbelt Agricultural Expo in Moultrie, Georgia, October 14th through 16th. We're going to have at least 1, maybe 2 ag airplanes. I think Thrush is going to be there also from the factory in Albany, Georgia. So it should be informative. You see everything you want. And come by and talk to us. And throughout the day, we're going to have a little informative question and answer sessions, as well as a few seminars also. So please mark your calendars. We'd love to meet you there and talk to you about the possibilities. We're going to have probably a small airplane, entry level, and maybe a little more intermediate or advanced airplane. I'm not sure what quite yet. So, but do check us out online, keep in touch with us. What I want to talk to you about initially is what an airplane can do. You know, an airplane can do so many things that other parts of your inventory in your barn, it takes one item to do one thing. In other words, you have a spreader, a granular spreader for fertilizer dry work. It takes a truck with a Slinger spreader. You know, when you have another thing. Whereas in an airplane, you have an airplane that can do a lot of different things. Because it can spray, because it doesn't have contact with the ground, it can do it even when it's wet. No compaction. And let's look at some of the things you can do while it's wet. This would have been a great year for it in the Midwest when it was so wet for so long. Everybody was waiting to get in their fields, chomping at the bits, ready to go, but they had to wait for the fields to dry up before they burned down, and then they had to wait for it to burn down to show before they went ahead and started their planting. But even though the rain had stopped, they were still waiting for their fields to dry. They could have put out their burn down material. And even if worse were come to worse, leave a little border or edge distance around the thing and trim it up right at the end. But they would have a lot of their work done, and that might make a difference depending on how big your operation is. A day or 2 or 3, in which we know at planting time can make a big difference because everybody's doing it at the same time. So we have burn down. Then if for some reason the burn down wasn't completely beneficial and you still had some volunteer, which you always do, your pre-plant or post-plant herbicide application can be done by air also. Say it starts raining again after you get them in. Always a situation you can do that. Fungicide treatments we've been using in the Midwest on corn and soybeans for a while with all the new genetic engineered crops that we have are working really, really well. The commodity prices have come down a little bit, as we all know, which has put a little bit of a tightening on us, and we all know that when times get tough, you tighten your belt, you try to do a little bit more yourself and try to save a little bit, try to survive, get into that survival mode so you can still make a decent living, can carry on your operation until things get good again, and then you're right there at the front ready to take off and go while everybody else is behind you. Insecticide application, no matter what the crop is, if you got bugs and they're tearing up your crop, you got to take care of them. Simple as that. And guess what? Good chance that everybody else in that area that planted at the same time, that has the same temperature and the same humidity and the same conditions everywhere else, is going to have the same bugs at the same time, at the same place. And when you really start thinking about that, that means that if you're not right on top of things or have somebody who you can depend on and who is very experienced on that, 2 or 3 days of an armyworm infestation can be devastating. We know that aphids, if it gets dry, spider mites, there's so many things that can happen and can occur. And not only the fact that when that happens, you don't want to drive over your already mature crop, but yet you don't want to see them suck all the moisture out of that thing because you want them to fill your pods. You know, this is a good situation where everybody needs it at the same time. There's only so many airplanes to go around. If you had your own, once again, you got that edge. You've got that ability to go out there and do it. Conditions and whatever are most susceptible to your crop to make it do right. The wind starts getting up, shut her down, go do something else. Foliar fertilizers are a big situation now that we're starting to realize, and all the scientists are getting smart enough to realize that you don't just go out and dump a whole bunch of fertilizer on the ground, then plant your seed and figure that once you put all that fertilizer on the ground, it's all going to go into that plant. We all know that's not going to happen. You're going to have raining, you're going to have leaching in the fertilizer, you're going to have, if it's too dry, you're not going to be able to get dispersal of the fertilizer. There's a lot of different things that go on. However, we're starting to realize that if you don't treat the ground, you treat the crop. This is a kind of a neat concept, just like humans. If we want to stay healthy and invigorated for the time, we will eat right, exercise when we can, and take vitamins to supplement our nutrients in our body. Well, when we take these vitamins and nutrients, we take them continuously, 1 a day, so that we maintain that good, healthy level. We don't wait 30 days, take 30 of them. Why? Just like fertilizer. It's going to leach out. In this case, if you eat it, it's going to poop out. You know, so there's a lot of things that are involved here by using half the fertilizer in your pop-up, get them set up, and maybe do an application every 2 or 3 weeks throughout the thing. Just keep that plant growing, keep it going. Then we're going to start seeing those big yields that we're actually starting to see more and more of. 100 bushel beans, 250 to 275 bushel corn. It's possible. We all know it's possible. It takes a little planning, takes a little bit more money, but with those kind of dividends, you can afford to do that. And we'll get into that later. We've already covered it in several of our other stages and informative videos. Growth regulants. Peanuts, I know of a group thing, you don't want it to, you want to make more of a root crop, less of a vine crop, or whatever the case may be. There's all kinds of growth regulants that do different things for different things. Ripeners and defoliants, mostly for cotton. You have your prep that opens up your bowl long before you want it to open up and get set up. Then you will knock the leaves off of it. Then you'll come in and you'll combine or harvest it with a cotton picker. Cover crops are a very, very big issue. And we're going to get into it a little bit more in just a little bit why it's sometimes hard to find somebody to do cover crops. But cover crops, we all know, and a lot of states are actually given incentive programs for this, is that all the erosion that occurs after you've combined, all winter long, all those storms that come through, all those little ravines that get washed down, all those little blocks and things that you have, all the little tracks and the, you know, that are into that crop, you don't have to fix it at the end of the year. You have something that's set up, you have it sustained. Also, you burn it down, it adds a little bit of more nutrients, it keeps the nutrients in the soil, all the benefits in the world for cover crop. To prepare it, especially with the new no-till farming concepts that we've been using for many, many years, depending more on chemical. Well, it's very important that we also stop erosion and a lot of other things that are bad. We all know you can't get in the field with your ground equipment when it's wet, and we've all seen ground compaction and what it does. The more you compact that soil, the less the roots are going to grow, the smaller the plant's going to stay. Simple. All right. I would like to talk about savings to you, Mr. Farmer, especially, but also to the ground operator to a degree. We already talked about the strategies involved in the first session. We've talked about the different airplanes you could get. We've talked about the physics involved in spraying and everything else. So hopefully you've looked at those and have a little idea, and now we can put it all into practical situation for you, Mr. Farmer, of how this can really benefit you. Let's just imagine that this is your farm. Let's just, for all practical purposes, just say you have a section. You got a 640-acre farm right here. All right. Commercial applicators, if you're not dealing with the ground people and that supply the chemical and everything else, the prices that I'm going to be talking about do not include the chemical. It's just for application costs. So let's say you have 640 acres, a full section of land. You're used to spraying, let's just take the Midwest because that's probably one of the most popular, or the Southeast, wherever the case may be. Now, know that because this growing season is shorter in the north, longer in the south, you can get more utilization of a piece of equipment in the south, and you still have the same interest in insurance and everything else as a fixed expense, so they have to charge a little bit more up north than they do down south, unless they have something that they can send an airplane from up there to down here and work this thing and utilize the airplane. But you know as well as I do, just like a combine, you know, it's tough to really justify that combine, to just use it for, you know, a month and a half out of the year to get in. The problem is, you want your crop in the bin or in the silo where it's safe. When you're ready to harvest, you're ready to harvest. But guess what? So is all your neighbors, because y'all planted at the same time. You've all had the same weather conditions. You've all had everything. Everybody needs it at one time. So that could mean that you're ready to go, but if you're not on the list in time, you might have to wait, especially if there's a rain delay, a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever the case may be. So, you know, if you're going to have to wait that kind of time just to get in line to do this thing, you've already benefited by having your own airplane, because you can get it, or your own combine, because you can harvest it when the crop is ready, get the best yield, and it's in the safe bin. It's not out there waiting to be blown down by the next storm. It's not there waiting for something to eat it or some kind of disease to take over or whatever. So when you spray, chances are in the northern part of the country, it's probably $8 to $9 an acre for application costs. Now in the southeast, believe it or not, we put out a little bit more volume and we get a little bit less. You'll pay probably about $7.50, or maybe even a little less, depending on how big the job is or whatever. Ultimately, it's all up to the individual of what they want to do. But in a situation like this, let's just say $8, just use $8 for a roundabout figure. And we see that if we pay $8 an acre for 460 acres, I don't have a calculator with me, but let's make this 1,000 acres and make it easier. 1,000 acres. But we spray that one time at $8 an acre for the airplane application is going to cost $8,000, right? 8 times 1,000 acres, $8,000. All right. Now, by owning your own small airplane, small used ag airplane to start with, you know, just checking this thing out, for example, you can, because you have your own land, your own strip, your own barn, your own mixing equipment you already have, your own trailers that you need, whatever the case may be. You come through to school, you get to school, you got your airplane, you got your insurance, you're ready to go to do your own farm. Don't even have to have a commercial pilot's license. You can do it with a private pilot's license as long as you're only doing your own farm, or 2 or 3 neighbors can get together and form a co-op and buy an airplane, which is very beneficial also. I would say that bottom dollar, even if you had to pay, let's just say a Pawnee, even if you had to pay a pilot $1 an acre, say, to do your spraying, and then the rest of the time, if he worked for you on the farm, he wouldn't have to just fly the airplane. You've got to pay him for the rest of the time. Turn him into a farm supervisor. Farm supervisor can check irrigation, he can work on the tractors, he can drive your combine to the end, he can help plant in the beginning, he can be a great help to you, and then when the need is there, he can break off and go do a little spraying when the conditions are right, early in the morning, wind gets up, shut her down, go back, always something for him to do. Now you have very good efficiency, and you're really starting to make your farm more self-sustainable, especially with the low commodity prices. You're going to be the survivor. Okay. But let's just say, I think I could show you how you could do that spraying, the actual airplane spraying, for $3 an acre of your own expense. Believe it or not, it's possible. You're working real close, no ferry time, boom, boom, boom. All right? That means there's $5 to the acre savings between that, and this may be extreme, but either way, it's just giving you some food for thought and how to work. 5,000 over this, if that's fine. That means that just that one spraying, you put $3,000 in your pocket. Okay, one spraying, 1,000 acres. Now, let's just look at that 1,000 acres. But if we were to really utilize this piece of equipment, maybe even sell off a tractor or sell off a little something here or there or something that we wouldn't need, shielded sprayer, whatever the case may be. If you did a burn down, you did a post-plant herbicide, you had this, 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 you know. Well, now you have, you know, 5,000, 6,000. So if you're farming, you know, and you can spray and take advantage of this, and this could be foliar fertilizers, could be multiple. It could be, you know, 1 to 6 times or whatever you decide. You know, so this is going to be a variable thing. So let's just break that out. Let's just say that we went over this 1,000 acres. Let's be realistic and just say we went over it twice with foliar fertilizer, once with fungicide. We did the burn down. So now we're looking at 5,000 acres, not 1,000 acres. Okay? So if it's 5,000 acres, say it's $5 an acre, so guess what? Now we're up to $25,000, correct? Okay, $25,000 for just this one. So if you're farming, or have 2 or 3 farmers together that have, say 5,000 acres, right? And you do it, each one of them, 5 times. 25 times 5. Now we're looking at substantial saving, even though I call it direct, and it's kind of insignificant, but you can see where it's beneficial. It pays for your help, it pays for this, it pays for your insurance, and it eventually pays for your airplane. But that's insignificant to what I'm really wanting to see happen. What I'm really wanting to see happen now with all this material, especially your fungicides and your foliar fertilizers. Let's just say that on average we've been getting 50 bushels of beans and 150 bushels of corn. on an average. That's kind of what we shoot for. That's what we're working for when we go into the season and work our business plan. Okay. By spraying it yourself. Now, once again, when the commercial guy, and let's take a look at how these commercial guys, especially in the Midwest, once again, Southeast is a little bit more direct because they've evolved to where most of the work is done not through the farm centers, but through the individual farmers. They buy their bulk fertilizer, their bulk everything else, or they go to whoever they have an account with, but they can get online and they can buy a lot of stuff. They bring it to the applicator most of the time in the South. That's kind of a general rule. In the North, where everything has gone through the farm centers, let's just take a look at a typical farm center, CPS, FS, whatever, you know, anyone, local people, whatever. What they basically do is just contract. They'll say, somebody come in, who wants to put out fungicide? Who wants to put out Headline, Stratego, whatever they decide to do. So they start lining up these acres of all these people who think they might want to do it. And it's been pretty lucrative for the last 7, 8 years because corn's been $8 a bushel. Well, guess what? Now it's $4 a bushel. So there's a lot of change here. So once he contracts all of these farmers and all these acres to do, it might be here, 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 here. He contracts with some other operator in some other place, and this operator brings people in airplanes and whatever. Once he sees about how many acres he's going to have to cover, he figures so many acres per airplane to cover, he comes down and he's got not only this farm center, but this farm center, one down here, and a whole bunch of them to use. So what he's doing is basically working through these different farm centers, doing all this work. The farm center is lining it all up because all the material goes through them. They supply the material. So they're getting a pretty good markup on the material, and that is their incentive for handling it. These people, their main and prime objective is to do as many acres as they possibly can to get all this stuff covered. You know as well as I do, when you have a whole bunch to do and not a whole lot of time to do it in, from tassel shoot to brown silk isn't a whole lot of time, you have all these acres to cover, quality becomes secondary, right? They have to put out the minimum amount of gallons per acre, 2 gallons per acre, to cover all these things, all these acres, because if they went 4 gallons, that'd be twice as many loads. And we've already seen from the previous ones that it takes more time for ferrying to do more loads if you're going to be putting more material out. So they don't want to do that. They want to get as many acres as they possibly can. So going 4 gallons or 5 gallons, to most of these guys are out of the question. Okay? And if you ask them to do it, they won't. If you ask them not to spray your stuff if the wind is any stronger than 10 miles an hour, most of them say, we can't do that. We can't shut down, because if we shut down, we've only have enough airplanes to cover this many acres, figuring just 2 or 3 bad days of weather or something like that. But we've got to do this, okay? Bad situation to be into. Whereas, Mr. Farmer, you don't have that situation. What you can do is assess your crop. And you have the ability now, because you have a tool that you can experiment and play with, which is the airplane. And the airplane, if you go out and do this field, say the first year you do it, you've been doing this field at 2 gallons per acre, because that's all they've been giving you, and that's what everybody does, so you figure that's the best. Not the case. Just like anything else. Sometimes more is better. In this case, the more volume you have, depending on the droplet size and how you can break it up, the more volume means more coverage. Simple as that. As long as it's broke up to the same micron size for the droplets and everything else, you're just going to have that many more of them. So, and you control it many, many different ways. But let's just say we tried this at 3 gallons or 5 gallons to the acre. 5 gallons an acre when you're spraying this corn crop, or bean crop, or whatever the case may be, and you're flying it with a slower airplane than a turbine. We've already discussed, you're going to get better penetration, better coverage. And what's all this about anyway? Is that we have found laboratory conditions that Headline and Stratego and all these can easily get 15 bushels to the acre if the coverage is there and it's put out in proper, ideal conditions. So, because you, Mr. Farmer, only interested in your own work, not the multitudes, you can pick and choose when, how, and where, and at what rate you want your spraying to be done at. And as the more you experiment with this, the more you'll find that this 5 gallons an acre might have only cost you, because remember, we're down to like $3.50 an acre for our cost, our dead cost for the farmer to do this. So that extra 5 gallons an acre might bring it up to $5 or even $6. Even if it goes to $6, you're still less than what the commercial operator was at. However, because you're doing a better coverage at 5 gallons an acre, covering these silks, covering the tassels, getting some penetration in there, hitting a fertilizer application from time to time here and there. Well, now we're going to start seeing our yield increase go from that 50 bushels of beans or 150 bushels of corn. If that starts going up and we get that extra 15 bushels per acre, or let's just say 10, let's make it simple, 10, that would make 60 bushels per acre. Okay? If we got 60 bushel an acre, which is 10 additional bushels of corn, of beans, excuse me, and we went to, let's just say, 160 bushels of corn, that 10 bushels and beans being $12, $13 an acre, 10, that would be 100, let's say beans, and 10 bushels of beans at beans right now, let's just say $12 a bushel. That's 120 bucks. Okay? Let's say we got 10 bushels of corn, even at $4. 10 bushels of corn, even at $4. That's $40. It cost us an extra $3. We've saved $2 or $3 initial savings from the direct savings in there, which is really insignificant. But what I see more than anything else, even if I add the 6, which is to put 5 gallons out instead of the 2 gallons out, to give me the coverage, it gives me the chance to get that 10 or maybe even 15, which would make that even that much more breakers because you got the coverage. Right? That's 40. So even if you take that away, you just bought the material, same material you bought no matter what. So let's take that completely away. It's $6 an acre. We got 40. That's 6 times that. That still leaves $34 per acre in corn. Right? You've already eliminated this completely. And you just stuck an extra $34 a bushel in corn. Let's go back to our 1,000-acre field. That's $34,000 because of increased coverage and increased yield, which gives you increased profits at the end of the year. And that's what it's all about anyway, gentlemen, is at the end of the year, after you pay everybody off, you want to have something left that sticks to your fingers that you can put it in your pocket. I hope you've learned something from this. I hope to see you at the Farm Belt Expo in Moultrie, Georgia, Sunbelt Ag Expo, and that is in October 14th through 16th. We will be there with at least 1, probably 2 airplanes. There'll be airplanes there. If you've never been, it's worth the trip, and we'd certainly like to talk to you, and we'd certainly like to help you make this happen and become good, safe ag pilots. Thanks for listening to this series. We'll have another series coming out soon. Don't hesitate to call anything that we can help you with. Thanks a lot. Bye.